Hey folks, it's Frithgar here, how you doing? Welcome back to Farming Simulator 22 here in Elm Creek. Wheat on this little field right here, and maybe not wheat on this field. Maybe we should put something else on this field, because we did barley on this field. So wheat following barley doesn't really make a lot of sense. You wouldn't do that, not normally. Do wheat first and barley would follow on afterwards if you're going to do anything like that. So, I don't know what the requirements for sorghum are. I'm thinking that maybe we should... Well, I don't know anything about sorghum. We could put sorghum on this field here. So that's a spring planting. And... I don't really know. You know, it doesn't matter. I keep making these plans, and we all know that I'm going to forget about them, because I'm not going to be able to do it all in one recording run, so honestly, it doesn't matter. We'll just kind of play it by ear as we go along. We're going to want to plant something with wheat, and I think we'll plant another field with barley as well. So we've already got some barley in storage, and that will be sold in the winter, and then we'll grow barley again, and we will also grow wheat. So we'll have two fields with straw. We did grow some oats. I don't think we'll grow oats this time around. We will leave the oats out of it, and we will just do the barley and the wheat. I think that's quite a good one to go and do. So that bit there is done. We've done the lime spreading. I need to go and put the lime spreader somewhere. When we get money, we'll be able to buy sheds, and then we'll be able to put stuff in sheds. So the field is being cultivated right now. That one actually is not going to... stay as a crop field for very long, because it will quickly turn into a field that will be, well, it'll be used as a yard extension. But then so will this field here. I'm thinking we keep these two. I may ultimately plough up the little lane in between them, and then we'll just have one big long field down through there. But other than that, I don't think we'll worry about it. Now, the great thing about this game is that I can fast forward now. We got up to 360 times fast forwarding speed, which is brilliant. Don't worry about that. I'll leave that on 1 speed. I do want to take a quick look at the production, because I want to see what water we've got. 7,000 in that one. Ooh. Right, before we go skipping the line, then we need to go and get a tanker full of water and drop it off at the greenhouse, because otherwise we're going to run out of water overnight, and I really don't want to do that. The other great thing, besides being able to fast forward at 360 times speed to really whiz things along if you want to, the other awesome thing about this game now is that you can skip the night at any point. You don't get a message saying you are not tired and you've got to sit around and wait pointlessly for no reason. You just go to bed. So if you wake up on August the 2nd and you've done all the jobs that you wanted to do for August on August the 1st, you just go straight back to sleep again. And then you move on to the next, well, if you're doing what I'm doing, which is 2 months per session. 2 months, 2 days per month. You can have as many days as you like. You can go up to a full 30 days a month if you want to, but I don't really see the point of that, because the game is like progressing year after year after year. That's the whole point of it. Why would... No, I don't want to do that. I want to do that. Let's just bring that round. I don't know if you noticed, but it was quite a sort of sharp movement of the tractor as we came in through here. So I want to just kind of blend this down a little bit, smooth it slightly, so that it's in future a smoother transition. So it's a little bit tight on the greenhouse there, but it's not actually so bad, because all we need to do is just back in there a little bit, and then we can... Am I putting it into the right one? Ha! I'm not. Okay, so I got a double load going into... Yeah, that's fine. We'll go and get 2 loads and we'll put it into the other one as well. And there. I have only ever carried water around to different... I've never carried water to a greenhouse or something like that, but I have carried water to animals in a field. One place that I worked, I was there during the winter, and it was quite a cold winter, and so we had snow on the ground for quite a long time, which is unusual in my part of the world. If we have snow, usually it lasts for a few days. If we have a cold snap, maybe a week where it's cold. But that year was particularly cold, and we had almost a month continuous of cold, icy weather. And in south of England, in the last 20-30 years, that is unusual. So it was a particularly cold year. I know some of you live in places where everything freezes up in like November and it stays that way until May, but I don't live in one of those places. What we have is that we have nice warm rain in the summer, and then in the winter the rain becomes cold. So generally it's around between 2 and 6 degrees through January, February and March, and so it's quite cold. And then for the rest of the year it warms up a bit and you have warmer rain. So that's the kind of place that I live, where we have rain, lots and lots of rain. Some farmers do grow arable crops, but generally most of the arable crops that are grown in my area are not particularly, some of them are classed as fit for human consumption, but a lot of them end up going for animal feed because they don't make the grade. We have too much rain. What we grow best in my part of the world, what we grow better than just about any other part of the world, is grass. We grow grass in vast quantities. So when I hear about things like, like cattle and sheep, they're really bad for the environment because I give them all this grain, I do genuinely get confused, because I got to remember that in other parts of the world things are done differently, and it's easy to forget that sometimes. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you live. It is easy to forget how just because you do something one way doesn't mean that everybody else does it that way. And as far as feeding grain to cattle are concerned, we may give a small amount of grain to cattle that are just reaching finishing weight. Same with sheep, because it just helps to give them that extra little bit of condition. But it's literally like a few bags of grain to be shared between a whole herd of animals, a whole flock of sheep. What we don't do is give them, the bulk of their diet is not grain. That's a supplement as a little bit extra, just to give them a little bit of extra condition towards the finish. Like, they don't eat very much grain at all. At some farmers, they don't give their sheep and lambs any grain whatsoever. It's just the grass. We got so much of it here, and the animals grow fat and sleek on all of this grass that we have. And they do really well. Like, take it from me, cows and sheep are very, very good at turning grass into something that us humans can eat. Now, I know that not all of you are necessarily going to want to eat a cow or a sheep, but it is, to my mind, a more environmentally friendly thing to do to have a cow or a sheep that has eaten grass on your doorstep for its entire life and nothing else than it is to ship food in from other parts of the world. We can't really, like, you can grow some food in this part of the country on a large scale. Yes, you can grow your own garden and you can grow vegetables in your garden, and there are parts of where I live that they grow masses of potatoes. I live in a region that is also quite famous for the amount of potatoes that we produce. So I'm not saying that we can't produce anything else, we can't do any other arable activities, we can. But the whole grain thing, like grass, is what we really do well. That's the big thing here. The big ticket item is our grass. And some parts of the area that I live in, you can't really grow anything else. The conditions aren't right for it. The moorlands, you don't grow other crops on the moorlands, so you can't really do it. You may be able to go and grow some arable crops, but the yield is going to be very poor, and although it would have been okay many years ago because the yield didn't really matter like it does now, these days with people wanting to maximize yield and crops and profit and everything on every single acre, you wouldn't be growing arable crops on moorland. It's just not done. You can't get the yields off of it. So it ultimately it ends up not being profitable. Anyway, how did I start ranting on about that? You know, carrying water. So, yes, I did start out with a story about how I've only carried water once. So it was this cold winter. We had about a month where the snow was on ground and it froze. And it got really cold, or at least for this area. The south of England, it was slightly, a few hundred miles away from where I live at the moment. It was really cold. And when I say really cold, I mean it was like -10 to -15 degrees. That's degrees C for anyone living in the US. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I have no idea. But it was -10 to -15, so it was really cold by our standards. And it stayed like that for a month, which is a long time to stay cold by our standards as well. Like, that was unusual weather. It was unusually cold. And it was a bit of a pain, because all of the water troughs that we had out in the fields for all of the cattle and the sheep, they froze solid. All of them. For the first week, we were able to go round 3 or 4 times a day with a hammer and smash the ice on the water troughs. So you'd go along with a hammer, you go up to the water trough, you'd smash the ice, and the cattle would be able to get a drink. But the water pipes in the ground froze up pretty quickly, and that stopped working. So once they drunk them dry, we had to have... It wasn't one like that one over there. It was... I don't know if we've got anything like that as a mod at the moment. It was a plastic water bowser is what we had. Kind of looked a bit like that. But it was smaller. So it kind of looked a bit like that, but it would have been a much smaller one than that. This is a big milk container, but it's just been converted for a mod. So it was much smaller than that. Kind of think like a round oil tank that you see people using. Let's skip the night a minute. And we filled that one up with water, and it was... And then you would drive that to the fields. We had 3 of these on the farm, and we had about 16 different locations with animals, because we kept all of our animals... we didn't put them all together in one big field. We had them all in small fields in different ranges, and at the time we had about 16 different animals. I thought that was supposed to suppress the weeds. Those weeds don't look very suppressed. That doesn't look suppressed. That looks encouraged. And the soybeans still aren't ready, which means for the whole of September, we can't do anything with those. I will go and spray the weeds now, but I don't want to spray the weeds anymore after that. I need a tractor to do this, don't I? There's a tractor. Let's use that one. We will spray the weeds. And after I have sprayed the weeds in the fields that we have, I will not spray any more weeds. That's going to be it. I'm going to turn weeds off, because weed maintenance is dull. The stone stuff, I'm going to keep the stone thing going at the moment. I see no reason to turn that off. And I don't think there's anything else that we what else have we got options for? So look. Is it in here? No, it's in this one. Crops and growth. Crop destruction will stay off on this series. Periodic ploughing I'll leave on, because then we've got to deal with it. Stones we leave on. Lime, yeah, I'll leave that on. So it's only the weeds that I'm going to turn off. Alright, that's fine. I can do that. I got 152 litres of liquid fertilizer in there. So I'm just going to bring that one over here down to this end. And I'll take that out a minute. And then we'll go and get that front tank on. So we bring it to here and we unload it. Then I will drop the front weight down here. So it's going to be October before those soybeans are ready. Which surprises me. Lower that down. So yeah, we had like 16 different locations with the animals. The sheep were in one field. And then the cattle were split up over a whole load of small fields. We did, after week 2... decide to go and group some of the cattle together to try and make it a bit easier for us. We only had 3 water bowsers. So what we had to do was we had to drive to the different fields. We could put the water from the Bowser. It didn't actually come with a pump. It only had, actually, well, one of them had a pump. Only one of them had a pump. The rest of them didn't have a pump. Now, I don't know if I unfold this one, if I can even use it unless I put a bit of herbicide into the front one. So we'll find that out just for a minute. Like this. It's going to unfold. Right, will it allow me to use just the front one, or am I going to have to empty that before I can do anything? Oh, it does. Ideal. Right, well, that's one thing. And it gets rid of the lime overlay on the field as well, so I actually quite like that. So 2 of them, all you could do is take them out to the field and just leave them there for a while for the animals to have a drink. So what you would do is you'd drive out to the field with your water bowser that had a water trough on the back of it, and you would drive into the field. The cows would come up and they would take a drink. And then once they'd had a drink, Control Z. Yeah, there we go. Once the cattle had had their drink, we would then move on to the next field. So they would all come along and they would all have a drink, and it wouldn't take them all that long to drink their fill, and then you'd move on to the next field and you'd stop there for a bit and you'd let them drink their fill, and you'd keep doing that until your water bowser was empty, or you'd gotten round all the cows. And they wouldn't drink the entire water bowser in one sitting, so you'd just get round all the cows and then you could drive back to the yard. You'd top it up and you'd drive out again. Now, we did this with one water bowser with the largest group of cattle, which was about half of the cattle that we had altogether. I'm not quite sure why we had so many small groups of others, other than maybe it was... I genuinely can't remember. Maybe it was because they were just in small fields, and so they were being kept separate, because there were times when they weren't all kept separate. With most of the cattle, not all of them, like you had young stock and that, so you did have to have separate groups. But I think ultimately we decided at the end of the second week that as the weather wasn't going to change, we needed to move some of the cattle. Now, unfortunately, it was this farm that I worked on was spread over about a 20-mile area. So it was, if you went from the furthest field on one side of the farm, it was nearly 20 miles to reach the field on the furthest side of the other farm. And we didn't own all of that land in between, just we had fields here and there all over the place. Some of it was rented ground that we used for whatever it was that we were using it for. Some of it was fields that we owned, little separate banks and that, because they bought up quite a bit of grasslands, just like little grass fields that a lot of the other local farmers didn't want, because they focused entirely on arable production and they didn't have animals in the first place. So we had animals, and so we bought up a lot of grass in different places. And we also rented off of these arable enterprises as well, because the farm I worked on was arable and had animals as well. So we had all of these animals. We did move some of them around, but moving them wasn't easy. Moving the sheep was easy enough. They all stayed in one big group. So the sheep, we had what we did with the sheep, I don't actually remember going to the sheep with the water trough, so maybe they had something else set up. Genuinely don't remember that, but I know that the other that we had half of the cattle all in one field. So one of the water bowsers that had the water trough on it was left parked in that field, and we would go out to the field as part of our rounds 3 times a day to crack the ice that was in the water trough, and then just make sure the water was still flowing from the bowser itself into the water trough. We had it all really well insulated, but it was still a problem. And then to move the animals from one field to another, all we had was a horse box that you could put 4, maybe 5, well, you could put 3 cows in it, or the younger stock, you could get up to 5 of them depending on what size they were. So moving them from one field to another wasn't easy, because if we had them all in small fields, which I think we did, then moving them together, you had to go and round them all up, and then you had to spend an entire day moving them, and it took ages to go and move them. If you wanted to go and move the cattle somewhere, it took a long time to get through all of that, to be able to actually shunt them around. So it wasn't a quick and easy job to move them, which is why we didn't want to do it in the first place. But this cold snap just sort of kept going and going and going. So we ended up moving them, and it did make our lives a little bit easier. Not a lot, though, to be honest. It didn't really make it a lot easier, and then we had the hard work of moving all the cattle, and then once the weather warmed up a bit, we moved them back again, because we still wanted to use the grass that they were in all small fields. So, yeah, it just ended up causing us more work. And there was one water tank that we had that had a pump on it. So you'd go round with the water bowser to some of the fields, and then the one trough would stay in the field that had the... Why am I turning that one off? That had all of the bulk of the cows in, and so that one, we wouldn't drive it away to go and fill it up. You'd take the one that had a pump on it, and you just drive that one over, and then you'd pump the water in, and it was actually quite quick and easy to do that bit. And then a few of the fields that had some of the slightly larger groups, slightly smaller but larger groups of cattle, we wouldn't take the water bowser to those fields either, because it would take too long for the cows to queue up and be able to get in there and have a drink. So we used to just keep their water trough filled up. You'd crack the ice every time you went through there, and then you would top it up once a day or once every other day using the bowser with the pump. It was interesting to actually go and do this. Now, I realise that those of you who live in colder climates, especially like those of you over in the US or Eastern Europe and that, where you have much longer and colder winters, you deal with this stuff all the time. But I will also add that although you do deal with this stuff all the time, because you deal with this stuff all the time, you've already got the infrastructure in place to deal with it. You've already got the things in place to make sure that your cattle have water all through the winter, and your sheep have water all through the winter. Everything's already in place. Here in this country, most farms, well, certainly in the southern half of the country, most farms don't have the infrastructure in place to be able to make sure their cattle still have water through a very prolonged cold snap. And so you've got to get a little bit inventive, and that's something about farming. Something in general that I like about farming is the way that farmers get inventive with coming up with solutions to things, because not everything is easy to go and do. We have unusual conditions turn up. You don't have your entire farm prepared for unusual conditions. It's not something you do. By the way, I am spraying this bit that's been cultivated, doesn't have weeds, because herbicide you can spray on the field and it does act as a preventative measure, or at least it used to in FS19, so we'll see if we get a strip of weeds turn up here a bit later on. I'm hoping that we don't. Just carry on, I won't bother turning off the sprayer. But yeah, so you can't really run your farm on the off chance that a once every 20 years thing is going to happen. And build your entire infrastructure around that, because there's a lot of expense that you don't actually need. So what you do is you wait for the once every 20 year event, which for us was the really cold winter, and then you adapt accordingly for that month that you've got this really cold blast of weather, and you've got to try and make sure that your cattle don't go thirsty. So it was really interesting doing it, and I'm glad that it happened. I'm really glad that I got to see all of that, and I got to sort of experience it and take part in it. I wasn't overly thrilled with all of it at the time. It did get rather tedious, spending an entire month driving around the different fields and that. It also, like, the cattle would be in normally, and genuinely confused as to this was winter, so surely the cattle should have been in, so why were we spending so much time driving around with water outside? That's the bit that I'm unsure about. The cattle did all come in. I know the cattle all came in eventually, why they weren't in for this, unless the cows were inside and all of the young stock were outside, because I know that some of the young stock stayed outside permanently through the winter. We had a lot of cows, by the way. It was a long time ago. I don't remember all the details. I do remember that so there were some cows indoors. There were cows in sheds, because I actually remember feeding those cows, and that's always the first thing that we did. And I remember it when it was really frozen solid, because the slurry in the yard outside was also frozen solid. Instead of pushing through it, you'd drive over it, and it was really rough and bumpy, and I didn't like it. And also, there was no decent heater in the Merlot that I was driving. At least, well, there wasn't much of a heater to start with. You had to wait for the engine to heat up. So when you first went out in the morning and you started driving off, it was really, really cold. And then once you'd been driving around for a while, it would start to heat up and it would warm up a bit. So if you kept the door and that closed on the cab, it would be kind of comfortable. It'd be kind of tolerable in there, but not brilliant. Right. Liquid fertilizer. I've got some fertilizer on here. Next thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to put fertilizer on that field over there. Again, I need another round of fertilizer. I think it will end up being faster if later on we can go and get ourselves a what do you call? Who's me what's it? Let me fill this one up a bit. I'll fill this one right up. If we can go and get a solid fertilizer spreader, that's what I want. If we have a solid fertilizer spreader, that is going to allow us to spread fertilizer across the field a lot faster than we can do it with this one. This one is rather slow going. I could go and put fertilizer on the entire field. I could put fertilizer on this field here before we plant. Then plant, although I don't think I can then go and put it on afterwards, so I don't think it really matters. We'll try it, shall we? We'll see what happens. We'll start with this one. This one needs its coat number 2. The problem with coat number 2 is you can never quite see where you put coat number 1. So I'm going to do it like this. Yeah, see how slow this is? If coat number 2 can be applied directly after planting, that is going to make life a lot easier for us later on. So we'll run round here and we'll do this. Like this. And I'll also do those 2 fields over there. And then that'll allow us to see if coat number 2 can be applied straight after planting. If you put one load on now, can we go straight on over it with round number 2 once we've done the planting? This sprayer here doesn't seem to have the option for a double application rate, which is unfortunate. I mean, unfortunately, folks, that is all we have got time for today. A massive thank you to everybody who has earned their way into the Great Book of Names. To find out some more details about all the names coming past, please head into the description and click on the link to the Discord. It's a link to another video. The link is on the other video. Please also consider checking out the links there for Nitrado, who provide gaming servers for games like Farming Simulator, Minecraft, Ark, and several others. And there's also Fanatical, who will help support your gaming habit by providing you with cheap games and also giving me a small commission on anything that you buy using my link. If you've enjoyed this particular video, then please head down below and give us a like. And if you really enjoyed it, then please tell your friends all about me. Get them to come and watch as well. That would be awesome. And until next time, thank you very much for watching. This is Frithgar. Goodbye, and see you later.